The diplomatic track regarding the war has stalled again. Kiev says they're ready for talks at any moment, but for now, partners' attention is consumed by the escalation in the Middle East, raising an awkward but vital question. Could the war over there turn into a reason for the war here to drag on for Ukraine? Why diplomacy is stalling again, and who really benefits from this pause? We'll discuss all this with Ilya Kotov, a public policy expert and doctor of philosophy in public administration. Mr. Kotov, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Ilya, if Ukraine says it's ready for talks even today, yet a new round still isn't happening, where do you think the main bottleneck is right now? In the United States, in Russia, or perhaps in the very structure of this negotiation process?
Despite the situation in the Middle East, by the way, I believe the bottleneck hasn't changed. Whether before the events in Iran or now, it remains solely in Moscow, in the Kremlin. Because the Russians aren't interested in proper constructive talks. The Russians aren't interested in ending the war. And right now, an opportunity has emerged to somehow use Iran as an excuse. Again, Iran is just a pretext not to go, not to meet. We can see what's happening. Technically, the talks have now stalled at the stage of choosing the next location. So the Americans say, of course, we won't go to the Middle East, which I think is logical and understandable. Come to us and we'll continue the dialogue. In other words, the Americans aren't pulling out, despite their own difficulties. In Iran, they're staying on the negotiation track and are ready to meet. But what is Moscow saying? What are the Russians saying? It's too far to fly to the States. Let's find another place. Again, this is purely a pretext to stall and disrupt the negotiation process while waiting to see how the situation in Iran unfolds. Because for them, it's very telling. And if the states show weakness, then the negotiation process might slightly shift its strategic direction. So the Russians are waiting and will continue to bide their time until the US operation in Iran concludes to see exactly how it ends for the states, whether the states show strength or show weakness. Our country's position is perfectly clear, of course. We're ready. The president said we're ready to go even to the Emirates. We aren't afraid. We aren't afraid. Well, basically, after 4 years of full-scale war, there's hardly anything left for us to fear. So yes, we are ready. We want this, but the problem, as always, lies with Russia, which has absolutely no desire to end the war, especially now with the Middle East crisis.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but President Zelensky stated that the American side asked to postpone, asked to delay the new round of talks due to the escalation in the Middle East. You're saying only Moscow.
The thing is, there have already been several of these delays. When the operation in Iran began, when the United States started the attacks, of course, they had other priorities. And this also fits into a fairly clear concept. And many historical parallels can be drawn, showing that the United States has never been able to achieve results on multiple fronts, both military and diplomatic. It's always been that way. There are many examples of this. Accordingly, the first such shift in the meeting's timing actually happened at the initiative of the states, but the Russians were only too happy about it. Now we're seeing probably the second or even the third postponement or delay, but this time it's based on Russia's position. And Russia's position, as I repeat, is very simple. We don't want to fly. We don't want to do anything. Let's have you focus on the Middle East for now. You've got other things on your plate. Stalling for as much time as possible. It's just that now opportunities have arisen to drag this out without even meeting. Before, to stall for time, they still had to go to meetings, listen, say something, and make preliminary agreements. But now the global geopolitical situation allows them to avoid even doing that. And that's unfortunate. So I repeat once again, it's not about the states. Yes, the states are maximally focused and concentrated on the Middle East. But at the same time, I think Vitkov himself would be ready to continue communicating and find some ways, because there's a slightly deeper concept and a deeper component here. In case of failure in Iran, and this must be said, it's a political catastrophe for Trump, and the only way out of this catastrophe, if it happens, is exclusively a quick peace in Ukraine. Trump simply won't have any other option before the election cycle. That's why, by the way, it's pointless for the Russians to rejoice at everything happening in the Middle East, because they could actually be next. If there's no success in Iran with elections around the corner, Trump will have no options left. American society needs to see some kind of foreign victory. And this victory can only come in the form of ending the war in our country. So the Russians will still face a lot of pressure in the future. And by the way, they're already saying this even in the Duma. Surprisingly, the Communist Party stated, "Don't you understand? We could be next after Iran." So some thoughts are already emerging that are perfectly clear, and that's good. Let them think and let them make the right decision. And the right decision is ending the war on fair terms.
If several such diplomatic vectors arise that the United States is facing, how typical is it in high-level diplomacy for one international crisis to literally push another aside to the point where it becomes unnoticeable?
Unfortunately for the states, specifically for the states, this is a completely typical situation. I, by the way, always bring up the example of the 1950s Suez Crisis, when the states were fully occupied with the Suez Canal and Egypt. At that time, Soviet tanks entered Budapest and simply shot at people who had come out to finally change the communist government. The states did not react in any way, meaning they just had other things to worry about. There was some diplomatic note, nothing more. There are many such examples, unfortunately, and that is exactly where the problem lies. In the wrong strategic choice of the sequence of their own actions. To start with, it was absolutely necessary to finish our war in our country and only after that start with Iran. Because what do the states have now? An unpredictable Russia just waiting for their weakness and problems in Iran. And of course, a global problem in the form of China. We are currently hearing a lot, by the way, from some historians and some analysts saying that this is probably the start of World War III, or that February 24th, 2022 was the start of World War III. I wouldn't say it so loudly, but one thing can be stated with confidence. The fact that the Cold War continues, but no longer between the States and the Soviet Union, but between the States and China as a superpower, that is a fact. And the situation in Venezuela, the current situation in Iran, these are all components of this Cold War. But then again, the situation between Russia and our country is also a component. So I am optimistic. The states need the war in Ukraine to end, not because they like Ukraine and so on. It is needed strategically.
Mr. Ilya, one more question. I'll ask you to answer it briefly. Now, in the event that our partner's attention is currently scattered, and I don't just mean the United States, what should Ukraine do then? Increase public pressure, look for perhaps some new mediators, propose new platforms, or just work quietly through diplomatic channels?
Work and hold on. Essentially what we have been doing for over 4 years, there is no other way. Any crisis has a tendency to end, including the one in Iran. The states will return their attention to our issue, and we must fully understand that Europe, unfortunately, will not be able to become a party to negotiations because the Russians absolutely do not respect European states. So if we are talking specifically about peace, then peace is a component that we must achieve together, specifically with the United States. And for now, hold on, and of course, support our allies because the world has indeed split into that axis of evil, where our main enemy is Russia, Iran, and the rest. And of course, the rational civilized world, which we can still include, after all, the United States, you and I.
Mr. Ilya, thank you. Thank you for joining us, finding the time, and explaining everything so thoroughly.